Let's talk about human incompetence. If you work in any modern corporate environment, you know exactly what I mean. We have entire departments dedicated to human resources. We have performance improvement plans, synergistic team building retreats, Slack channels, and endless layers of middle management. And yet, despite all of this infrastructure, your average human employee will still inevitably mess up. They will reply all to a company-wide email, they will crash the database, or they will simply forget to do the one specific task they are paid to do because they were too busy scrolling through social media in the bathroom. Humans are, biologically speaking, highly emotional, easily distracted, and fundamentally unreliable machines. But what if I told you that the most competent, reliable, and flawless railway employee of the late 19th century was the human at all? What if I told you that in an era of steam, steel, and crushing industrial danger, the guy pulling the levers and directing massive multi-ton trains was a literal monkey? Welcome to the Competence Void. Today we're traveling to South Africa in the 1880s to look at the bizarre, absolutely true story of Jack the Baboon. We're going to explore how a double-amputee railway guard managed to bypass every single safety regulation in the British Empire by hiring a wild primate to do his job. We will look at the sheer, unadulterated panic of upper-classes passengers realizing their lives were in the hands of a macaque, and how human bureaucracy was forced to officially employ an animal because he was simply better at the job than any human applicant. If you ever feel like you are underappreciated at your job, just remember your employer would probably replace you with a baboon if it was legally permissible. Grab a ticket and stay off the track. It's going to get wild. To understand how a baboon ends up on the payroll of a major government railway, you first have to look at the idiot who hired him. Meet James White. In the late 1880s, James was a railway guard working for the Cape Government Railway in South Africa. He was stationed at the Uitenhage train station. Now, working on the railways in the 19th century was not a safe profession. There were no OSHA regulations, there was no safety harnesses. It was a brutal, unforgiving world of boiling steam, crushing iron wheels, and zero margin for error. But James White had a massive ego. He was known to everyone as Jumper White. Why? Because James had a party trick. To impress the passengers and his fellow railway workers, James would routinely jump between moving train cars. He would leap from one moving carriage to the another, swinging around the heavy iron couplings like a Victorian acrobat. It was a fantastic trick, until of course the Competence Void caught up with him. In 1877, James misjudged a jump. He slipped and he fell directly onto the tracks, and the massive crushing iron wheels of a passenger train rolled right over him. He survived, but the doctors had to amputate both of his legs at the knee. In the 1870s, there was no disability insurance, there was no workers' compensation. If you couldn't work, you starved. James White was a double amputee in a world that had absolutely no safety net. He carved himself a pair of wooden peg legs, but he was practically immobile. He begged the railway authorities to let him keep the job as a signalman. Out of pity, they agreed, giving him a job operating the switches at a local signal box. But James had a massive logistical problem. To get to the signal box, he had to push himself on a small wooden trolley down the tracks, and once he was there, he had to physically pull heavy iron levers to switch the tracks for incoming trains. It was exhausting, agonizing work for a man with no legs. He was on the verge of being fired because he simply couldn't keep up with the physical demands of the job. He needed a miracle, he needed an assistant, but he couldn't afford to pay a human. One afternoon, James was visiting a local market in Uitenhage when he saw something that completely shattered his understanding of biology and labor laws. He saw an ox wagon rolling through the market, but the person leading the oxen, pulling the reins and directing the massive beasts of burden wasn't a person. It was a Chacma baboon. Let's pause and appreciate the absolute madness of the 19th century. Today, if you see a wild baboon in a city, you call animal control and lock your doors. In the 1880s, you apparently just handed the keys to your wagon and let it run your errands. James White looked at this baboon and didn't see a wild animal. He saw a mobility aid. He saw a free employee. James approached the owner and begged to buy the baboon. The owner, probably realizing that selling a highly intelligent, potentially aggressive primate to a double amputee was a hilarious idea, and agreed. The baboon's name was Jack. James took Jack back to his small cottage by the railway tracks and thus began one of the strangest interspecies partnerships in human history. Jack was incredibly intelligent. James trained him to push the wooden trolley. Every morning James would sit on the trolley and Jack the baboon would push him down the railway tracks to the signal box. But Jack didn't stop there. He became James's domestic servant. He learned how to sweep the floors. He learned how to take out the trash. He even learned how to pump water from the well. Jack was essentially operating at a level of highly efficient, non-unionized human intern. But pushing a trolley and sweeping a floor is one thing. Operating the critical infrastructure of a national railway network is something entirely different. The job of a signalman in the 1880s was not simple. You didn't just pull a lever at random. When the train approached the Uitenhage station, the train driver would blow the steam whistle at a specific number of times. 1 toot meant one track, 2 toots meant another track, 3 toots meant the coal yard. The signalman had to listen to the specific pattern of whistles, identify which train was coming, and then pull the corresponding heavy iron lever to switch the tracks so the train wouldn't derail and kill everyone on board. It required focus, auditory processing, and an understanding of cause and effect. James White was struggling to manage the levers with his wooden legs, but Jack the Baboon was watching. Jack was always watching. One day a train approached, the driver blew the whistle. Before James could even reach his wooden crutches to stand up, Jack walked over to the control panel, grabbed the correct iron lever and pulled it. James was stunned. He waited for the next train. The whistle blew a different pattern. Jack walked over, selected a different lever and pulled it. The baboon had reverse engineered the entire railway signaling system just by watching his boss. Think about the people you work with. Think about the guy in your office who still doesn't know how to mute his microphone on the Zoom call after 4 years. Now think about a wild baboon in 1881, flawlessly operating a multi-track railway junction without a single training manual. The human ego is so fragile, pathetic thing. James White realized he had struck gold. He officially handed over the operation duties of the signal box to Jack. James would just sit in his chair smoking a pipe while Jack the Baboon ran the station. Jack would listen for the whistle, pull the levers, and then, in a display of terrifying cognitive awareness, he would actually look out the window to visually confirm that the tracks had switched correctly before sitting back down. For months, the Uitenhage station ran with absolute flawless precision. The trains arrived on time. The tracks were switched perfectly, but there was a fatal flaw in James' wild master plan. He forgot that trains have windows, and windows have passengers. Now imagine you are a wealthy aristocrat Victorian lady. You're sitting in the first-class carriage of a steam train, sipping tea, enjoying the scenic view of the South African landscape. As the train approaches the Uitenhage station, you look out the window toward the signal box to see the hard-working railway employee guiding your train to safety, and instead of a man in a uniform, you see a massive hairy baboon hanging off the iron lever, staring dead-eyed at your carriage. Welcome to the panic void. The passenger absolutely lost her mind. She didn't just complain to the conductor, she went straight to the top. She filed a formal, furious complaint with the executive management of the Cape Government Railways, stating that the Uitenhage station was being operated by a wild ape. The executives in Cape Town were confused, angry, and assumed the woman was hallucinating, but they had to investigate. They sent a delegation of senior railway inspectors down the Uitenhage to fire James White and presumably shoot the baboon. When the inspectors arrived, they expected to find chaos. They expected to find a derelict station run by a madman. Instead, they found James White sitting peacefully in his chair and Jack the Baboon maintaining the cleanest, most efficient signal box they had ever seen. James begged for his job. He told the inspectors that Jack wasn't just a pet, he was a highly trained professional. The inspectors, caught in a bizarre intersection of bureaucratic protocol and sheer morbid curiosity, decided to do something unprecedented. They decided to test the baboon. Let us review the official testing procedure of the Cape Government Railways, circa 1881. The inspectors instructed the train driver to drive a locomotive back and forth down the line, blowing rapid, complex and deceptive whistle patterns to try and confuse the primate. They were actively trying to make the baboon fail, and Jack didn't even blink. Every single time the whistle blew, Jack selected the correct lever. He pulled it flawlessly. He checked the tracks. He even looked at the inspectors with what I can only assume was a look of profound primate contempt. The inspectors were paralyzed. They had come to fire a disabled man for gross negligence, but they were forced to admit that the baboon was actually better at the job than the human replacements they had lined up. The bureaucracy had hit a wall. They couldn't fire James because the station was running perfectly, but they couldn't just ignore the fact that a monkey was operating government infrastructure. So they did the only logical thing a government bureaucracy can do. They formalized it. The Cape Government Railways officially hired Jack the Baboon. This wasn't an under-the-table arrangement, this wasn't a mascot situation. Jack was given an official employment number. He was entered into the government payroll system. His salary 20 cents a day and exactly half a bottle of beer every Saturday. Welcome to the corporate void. The realization that capitalism does not care about your species, your soul, or your dreams. Capitalism only cares about your output. If a baboon can pull the lever faster and cheaper than a human, the baboon gets the job. And honestly, half a bottle of beer a week is still a better benefits package than most modern gig economy workers get today. For the next 9 years, Jack the Signalman was the most reliable employee in the entire South African railway system. He never showed up late, he never complained about working conditions, he never asked for a raise. And most importantly, in 9 years of operating heavy railway infrastructure, Jack never made a single mistake. Not one. He had 100% success rate. He became a local celebrity. People would travel from all over the country just to watch the baboon operate a train station. Jack would even take the keys to the coal sheds, walk out to the train drivers and unlock the gates for them. He was a fully integrated member of the logistics chain. Tragically, the story of Jack does not end with a peaceful retirement. In 1890s, after nearly a decade of flawless service, Jack contracted tuberculosis, a very human disease, and died. James White was reportedly inconsolable, having lost not just his mobility aid and his employee, but his best friend. Jack's skull is still on display today at the Albany Museum in Grahamstown, South Africa. A silent bone white monument to the greatest railway worker who ever lived. Stay strange, stay sharp, and whatever you do, don't let management know that the monkey can do your job. See ya.